And these trees are pretty amazing. And this project is more about people than trees, but trees are really a centerpiece to it. And these trees have been, they're in the mahogany family of hardwoods. They're all over Africa. They're called different names in different places, but the mvule tree in particular has been a cultural icon for a lot of folks there in Eastern Africa. So it has a lot of deep significance for bringing that back into those communities. So then, as the year kind of comes to fruition, and they've got funding for a project that they've identified, and they've been a part of something that isn't just even a handout, but it provides dignity and investment in their local community in a way that can make an impact. So there's a lot of opportunities to take that platform and do other things with it as well. But we'll go ahead and share right now. This is a couple. All right, yeah, I'd love to hear. I don't know if you want to say anything now? Introduce yourself?
I can just, I programmed the site, and I think the coolest thing for me so far, and we only met about 2 months ago, just kind of like they told me the idea, and we're like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing, how can you help? Is not as much even what we've done so far, but like what I think can be done moving forward, and coming into a project where I really didn't know a whole lot about it, but I knew quite a bit about Uganda through Invisible Children, which I guess there's something going on here later today for that, which is another group that is involved in Uganda. And I looked at this as an opportunity where I could get involved with something and actually see the kind of benefits of my labor pay off, pretty quickly. And so, looking at something like this, there's a lot of technology that I use on a daily basis that I wouldn't think would apply to a project like this, but the more and more we get into it, there's a lot of things that could be done to kind of bridge the gap between, I don't want to say a third world country, but a country like Uganda that I've never been to or even been in that region of the world, but you can affect lives over there. That's the coolest thing for me so far. But yeah. You want to show the videos?
Yeah,
okay.
We'll show a video, sit back, just a little background music. It explains the story of the Mvule project, and then we can dive into the site a little bit more. And I think this group's, everyone here is probably a technical group, right? And I don't know how much you want to see in terms of what we can do with Google Maps or what we can begin to do, but that's probably more something you guys will know a lot more about than I do, that's for sure.
Come on.
Opening up.
Nothing's coming out.
Those are not FOI.
Can we play the whole thing still? I'm just going to want to import it
Last year, there's a Kibo Group is a nonprofit 501c3 that does a lot of think tank startup ideas, and this was one that kind of germinated last year. And a few people actually bought trees. There wasn't a full website, but it was more of a PayPal sponsored tree and make it work. And a couple hundred trees were sold. I think about 200 that have been now planted in the ground this summer. They've only had 4 die, which is amazing. We weren't quite sure how all that would turn out. And so then that was part of the impetus, too, to say we've got, kind of a new website and facilitating an easier process for folks to sign up, sponsor a tree, track the tree. And so the videos that you see are actually people that are involved in the project locally in Uganda. One guy drove 6 hours from the Department of Forestry to come and sit in for a video interview and is excited about the project.
Sure, I'm just going to play it off the site because it's
great.
Funky, so. Is the sound coming through?
Doesn't look like it. Do you know if any sound?
It's not even playing through your thing.
If not, you can always watch these at your leisure. Well,
I'm happy to be here today and to tell you about the Mvule project.
It is a project that will go a long way to change the thinking of the people of Uganda.
And the Kibo Group thought wisely to come and teach us how important trees are, mostly the Mvule tree.
1 tree planted in Uganda, 2 trees planted in Uganda have got a positive effect on all the population of the world.
It was in great abundance in the past.
The mvule tree wasn't respected.
There was a lot of anarchy in terms of exploitation of resources, and the mvule tree also fell a victim.
And so the Mvule Project 1 is intended to put back a village treasure that's dying out, but then also use that as an avenue to do something more for the village.
I'm excited also to hear about Mvule Project, and I'm waiting, I'm ready to plant those trees.
And we are happy to do that even if we'll never be there. But we are helping the future generation.
It will help more my children, my grandchildren.
We have a proverb in Lusoga that says, "Emiti emito ne chibida." That means that the young trees are the forest, and when we look at a tree, it grows exactly like a child.
So this is a long-term relationship that the children of Uganda are now establishing with their brothers and sisters in the United States.
It makes a lot of difference. It makes sense. It's something that is appreciated.
And I think Mvule Project is going to help our country revive.
I think I see it coming out as a success, as a big success story.
And we shall grow like the Mvule, and we shall be big in future.
It's great. It's a good overview of the project. The second one down below, which we don't need to play that right now necessarily, but it'll describe, if you want to watch that at your own desk or whatnot, how the project works, which I described the mechanics of sponsoring a tree, planting a tree, and how that would function. So that, no one argue that planting trees is a great cause, supporting these local communities, great cause, and really just the ability to bring some things like, GPS, Google Maps, to allow it to be connected to folks in more resource available areas that feel like, hey, I could sponsor a tree rather than buying a dead Christmas tree. I'm going to buy a tree in Uganda and make an impact in someone's life. So that's really the primary message of what the project's about. And then I know we want to share a little bit too about what are some of the ideas going forward. What are some of the opportunities that would either be to get involved or get connected or see where things could take off to. Oh yeah, let's do that. You grab the mic. Yeah.
So I'm
Dominic's
just
going to drive through it.
Walk through real quick, and I guess this would be kind of the Google part of it, which, I'm sure it's something you guys have all seen before. But basically, you come in, as a regular user to the site, and you would go sign up to buy a tree, and just because this is kind of general stuff. I would go in and buy a tree. I'd get the idea of a tree. You can go in here and register the tree.
When you buy a tree, there's a drop down of projects that you can associate your tree to.
Yeah, so you can see, you can pick which which organization you want to support, and you can learn about these projects before. You can follow them without having to buy a tree. You can follow the trees without having to buy a tree. So once you get inside and you've added a tree, you can go and kind of follow that tree. And there's people on the ground that are, checking these trees all the time. And, one of the things, kind of the next step for me is to build kind of an interface for them to be able to update the trees from Uganda so that, the people are getting live updates on a pretty frequent basis as opposed to just getting a satellite image, which isn't going to be as prevalent. And then you can view, things about the project. You can click on each project and view, kind of the same stuff. See what other trees are involved with that project. See how many, trees potentially that project's trying to achieve for that year to meet their, their fundraising numbers, kind of thing. But the cool part, I guess for the Google side of it is that. Basically, we've mapped with the GPS coordinates each location of the schools of the trees, and it was kind of like astonishing for me, especially since when we started this, the satellite image was pretty far out. That on specific cities and locations, we're actually able to get down and see the actual schools and trees. So it's kind of hard to see right there, but. I've never been to Uganda, and I've never, experienced any of like what Troy has. But it was kind of cool when I was working through this to get a familiarity with the layout of the cities and the country just by, clicking through the maps and things like that with the buildings and the trees that we were finding. And then the same goes for the trees. If I click on the tree, and the tree's already been, the tree's been planted or the tree's been tracked, then we can do the same thing. And get down to a pretty close level. It's like one tick from what a normal would be, and actually see the tree. So over the course of, however long the tree is going to be alive, people can follow this, and at least in some respect, depending on how often that stuff's updated, and you guys would know a lot better than I would, you can kind of follow the growth of it. And then at the same time, the people that are using the site are updating the images and the information on the tree as they're getting planted. Yeah. So more or less, that's the basics of it.
There'll be more detail about the projects that you could be attached to the project at that preschool and have a little bit of correspondence and updates in terms of what they've accomplished, and the tree stuff would flow as well. Questions about the functionality? Click through. Does that make sense?
Do you know that the resolution was going to be higher for the areas that you're interested in, or is that just a convenient coincidence as far as being coincidence?
Yeah,
it was actually low. It was actually lower when we started working and talking about this project.
Can you try to repeat the questions because
Sure.
other people watched on the tapes later?
The question is, did we know that the resolution was going to be high in the areas that we were looking at? And the answer to that is actually when we started looking at this project about 2.5 months ago, we were in my office and you couldn't get that close even just 2.5 months ago.
When they first kind of told it to me, I mean, I thought it was a cool idea when I first heard it, and I was like, wow, that's kind of, creative. And then I started thinking, well, the satellite image is not going to be very good at all. And, we kind of thought, well, at least if we have the coordinates when they do get better, we'll kind of we'll have the functionality in place already. And then, literally we kind of started working through it, and people started clicking around on the cities that they were familiar with, and we're like, wow, there's buildings that they had, been to and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool to see it kind of update.
So if you know anybody that can upload the latest images, like from the last pass, that would be great. Yeah. You?
Getting the imagery?
Yeah, if you know people who have planes or satellites
and
have the images and know where the images and geocode the images, then we'll get them.
Yeah, and it's definitely like very specific because, for example, in one of the main cities, Jinja, there's like really, really, really good coverage. But then as you get further east, there's nothing. So it's spotty, but it's good enough that most of the places that I think we're going to be involved in are going to have at least some level of detail.
You said about 100-mile radius, right?
About a 25 square miles from Jinja, but then you have Kampala, and then basically that whole road that goes up into central Uganda is completely mapped, as well as the one you can kind of see that. I don't know if that's downtown or.
Well, the other kind of one of the future things that we had talked about is MMS is big in kind of Africa and Uganda, is being able to set up an API where someone could actually take, when the guy's out on motorcycle with his clipboard checking the trees, making sure they're okay or whatever, they could actually snap a photo and be able to send it into the site, and the site would know what to do with it and actually post it to the appropriate, because every tree is given an ID the day it's planted. So.
Yep.
And in terms of other organizations and how this could grow too, right now the relationships on the ground in southern Uganda are very well developed, and usually that local readiness is the hardest thing to do in a project like this. So the fact that that was already there, and what's so amazing and really kind of captured my heart is that they're in very needy communities. They're in very rural communities, not so much in the cities where a lot of the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, are located, but in local villages, and that's the folks that will impact from this most directly. And that's where the relationships are. So there's about 50 kind of local villages that have projects that are identified that would support about 5,000 trees right now. And then the idea of expansion to any other organizations as well. So and that's out there. But if this platform became a multi-organizational platform where folks could say, hey, we'll do a Christmas tree campaign this year, and it's an environmental group, or it's Armstrong's Nursery. It could really be anyone that feels like this is a worthy cause. And then have the back end fulfillment taken care of in what's built on the site, but yet it would be somewhat of a co-branded experience where they could integrate that with their own site, begin the process, and then hand it off for all the tracking and fulfillment on this end. And then the scalability factor would go up significantly. And another organization we mentioned, Invisible Children. They work in northern Uganda, where about 90% of the population's in these what they call internal displacement camps, where they have a peace agreement. They're getting ready to move out back to their villages, and what a great way to help offset that first year's financial burden and help them reforest some of their own local communities and kind of fund part of that return back to really an agricultural society that would take a while to kind of ramp up the economy that they're used to. So it might be able to become a platform that other organizations could use and become a little bit broader as well. So just wanted to.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking even on the plane up ideas of kind of school for a school. So a school here in the States could kind of get on board and commit to sell a certain number of trees so that they could help build a school in Uganda. And so we would provide a way for them to kind of put this information on their site, whether it's the beginning part of the sign-up process or the beginning part of purchasing trees. So they would actually be purchasing trees through this local school's website, but then as the process gets further in the purchasing process, they would hand it off to Mvule. But the idea that they could commit to sell 100 trees through their school so that they could build a school in Uganda.
Yeah, it's good.
So I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time understanding what the goals of the project. Is it reforestation? Is it an agricultural crop? Is it money raising with the side effect of putting these trees on? The end goal, I'm not exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Question is end goal. What's the purpose in terms of agricultural? Is it economic development? And I'd say it hits a lot of those things. That's what's interesting, is it intersects a lot of interests. Obviously, the local interest of the people that it directly affects and the projects associated with is a huge thing. But the tree itself and reforesting that particular type of tree hasn't been a concerted effort. It's definitely not a crop tree. It's no financial benefit in having these trees, which is part of what makes it work. People aren't going to be incented to cut them down and sell it right away. It's a hardwood tree that takes a long time to mature, but does grow quickly. And if you've seen them in person, they're just these towering. They're magnificent trees. And so it's interesting, even like the king of the Bosoga tribe in southern Uganda came and met with folks at Mvule Project and said, man, we are excited about this project because of the cultural heritage of the tree. So the fact that it intersects kind of a cultural heritage and reforesting the trees that during the kind of colonization years, a lot of those trees have been cut down. So that's a huge impact, is being able to bring these trees back in significant numbers. Could make an interesting effect as well.
And just to kind of add to that, there is a gestation period for the tree once they plant it that it does need to be taken care of. And so that's kind of how the idea came about, that they would, a person here could buy a tree for $45, and that money would go to the villagers and the children to take care of that tree during that period at which the tree could kind of live on its own. And so then that money could be earmarked for a certain project, like the village might say that we need a well drilled or we need a school or whatever. And so Mavuli would come in and kind of help them plant the trees, but then as they take care of the trees for the first year, is it a year? Mm-hmm. As they take care of the trees for a first year, that's the year that they get paid for kind of taking care of the trees. And the other thing that I love about it is the sustainability of going over there and really kind of giving them an opportunity to kind of make their own way and earn the money to kind of build the school and stuff. I think there's a lot of like local pride in that, and being able to say, yeah, we were able to take care of these trees, and that's the result of this, is that we were able to build this school or drill this well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So it does seem like it's economic development, and the trees are kind of, well, there's like these paired goals, right? The money is not going to
absolutely paired goals.
The money is not going to the tree. The money is going into the communities.
It's both.
It's both.
Yeah,
it's both, because there is a cost of obviously planting the trees and that kind of thing. But the idea is that the money goes to a specific kind of project, and we look at the trees individually when we sell them, but definitely as a project of this group of trees is going to raise money for this specific project.
Yeah.
So the ground organization is, there's one ground organization. There's one ground organization for each project. How does that work?
Right now, there's one ground organization that's under the umbrella of Kibo Group, which is the nonprofit that Mavuli Project sits under. And the folks there on the ground are the ones with the relationships right now with about 50 different villages and local communities in southern Uganda. So that's the on-the-ground readiness that's there. So those relationships are ready to go, and people in that region know what they've done some other things in, like Jinja, the town. They've got a local coffee shop, and they bring in people to help with agricultural planning and crop rotation and irrigation, and so that they have a presence there that's been for 12 years. So that's a real ripe organization. Down the road, it could easily be expanded to other organizations that also have local presence and local relationships. And this could really become a platform that we just extend the technology and the back-end services to allow anyone with local relationships that fits the criteria of, in Africa, there's a lot that would fit that.
Mm-hmm. In some sense, isn't it the ground organization that's more valuable than the web presence?
Absolutely. What we did was a couple months of work, and we volunteered our time. And the question was, is the ground organization, their efforts are significantly more valuable. That's the part that you can't easily reproduce. The thing that's interesting, though, there's a lot of ground organizations out there right now. We're just connected to one of them that we know intimately and are using to kind of get the first 5,000 trees done. But this could be a platform for other ground organizations as well. So you're absolutely right.
One of the things that I remember too is, because I like I said, I just kind of jumped into this a couple months ago, is when we were kind of going over this with the people that have been involved with it a while. They were excited because it was kind of like they had a tool to help them do their jobs better on the ground and fulfill these trees and kind of, I don't want to say get the word out, but take what they were doing to like the next level. And that's basically what I think we did more than anything was gave the people on the ground the tool to do what they need to do out there. And again, that's why I was saying that's why I got involved, is because I can do a little bit of work, and then somebody that does this for a full-time job out in Uganda can take it and run with it, and actually make it beneficial.
And to expand on that a little bit, we are kind of phase 2 of the site is really to work with the people on the ground to help them with their processes of how they manage the trees, how they manage even the money side of things, of making sure money gets to the right projects, and managing the projects and inventory, and when do we need to go out and check this group of trees and stuff. The second part of the site is really kind of a staff back end that'll manage all that, because we already have the data. We're already putting, each tree has an ID, each project has an ID, it's already in there. So now how do we expand that into kind of a staff dashboard that they can access from Uganda and see, okay, we need to go out and check on this group of trees, or we need to make a payment to this village because they fulfilled their year. And so that's kind of phase 2. Phase 3 is really kind of all the wacky ideas that we have for expanding it, but phase 2 is really the staff part of it.
Can you talk a little bit about who takes the photos and who's keeping tabs on the trees?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a team of folks on the ground in Uganda. They're both some folks from the U.S., but a lot of local leadership that has been in place there for a decade. and they're organized where they would employ a few people that are on bicycles and maybe some motorcycles to do the kind of monthly or quarterly inventory of the trees. When they're initially planted, they actually spend a lot of time working with the local community to identify a project, make sure people understand what this is about. There's actually a process by which they identify the places where the trees will be planted and make sure it's on approved kind of ground. It's a school, it's government property, it's private property. There's a actual kind of little document they explain to prepare for that planning process, so the community understands the message. Now that a couple projects have been planted and there's bank accounts open with money in it, there's a lot of people that go, okay, now I get it. And so that's a little bit of the prep, and then the planning event actually happens. We give them all the same planning date, even though it's scattered over multiple weeks. And then and they're grown in a nursery there in local Uganda that is being built out, and the folks at Department of Forestry have helped with that. They've and so they're planted as saplings, and they're staked with an identification number and then also a GPS coordinate. And a couple of those, I think, wander off and turn into toys for some kids or something, the stakes. But either way, you can identify where the tree is with the location. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Why did you turn your attention towards trees rather than any other resources that can be built or
So why trees? Yeah, that's a good question. The why trees? These trees are very significant there. We don't quite get it here because we plant trees from nurseries and doesn't mean as much. These trees are very culturally significant, so you kind of go there and you get that part. And trees from a U.S. perspective too. I mean, it has a lot of marketability to it. It's simple. I get the message. I can be connected to a tree. I'm sponsoring a tree, but obviously it goes way beyond trees. And
that was one thing I really liked about it. Is that it's kind of like why trees? It's like why not? It's simple. I mean, it's not overly expensive, and who doesn't want to plant a tree if they can help? And if you can plant a tree and help. The visual agriculture of Uganda, but at the same time, and probably at a much bigger scale, help the communities and help the schools and all the people. It's like it's a simple idea that the tree is kind of ends to a mean, I guess, but it also has the benefit of you're planting a tree as if you were planting it in San Jose.
Yeah, well, and I think the project was dreamed up quite a few years ago. It just kind of happens to be a coincidence that it's around the same time when everybody's talking about going green, and green is a huge thing right now. The guy that's not here, Mark, could probably expand on that a little bit because I think it was his kind of initial idea, his brainchild. But it is kind of just a coincidence that it came around the same time. I think this idea, to kind of touch on what we talked about earlier, I think this idea has been kind of kicked around quite a bit, and they have kind of the infrastructure to do it on the ground, but they've just never really had kind of a way to get it back here and really make it a reality. And that's what's been fun for us is, I mean, I look at, designing the site. I mean, it was a couple days of my time, and now I get to impact, Uganda, which is pretty amazing. And I mean, Dominic probably has the most time vested with the programming, but again, relatively a couple months of time to be able to make such a huge impact. It's fun to really be able to do what we do best so that these people now can kind of make it happen on the ground.
And if you could plant a tree and watch a child grow, it's kind of the idea. You get both.
How does it work with property rights?
That's part of the pre-planning checklist. So there's each tree is there's either a sign-off form if it's private property, and public property has been established as what the parameters are to plant trees there. So a lot of the locations that make a ton of sense are around schools, public areas, parks, beltways and corridors for traffic around those things. And interestingly, these trees don't do well when they're planted in tight clusters. So I've had a hard time figuring out how to bring them back in large numbers in dense areas. So really an effort that is spread out throughout, more rural areas makes a lot of sense.
So you're planting 100 of them. I saw the pictures. I mean, they'll take up a large area,
yep.
Right? So are they planted in sort of one group, or are they scattered
No,
throughout a village
usually
area?
they're scattered, and they'll be scattered in like areas like I mentioned, or even along private property. Oftentimes what happens is they'll go every other one along a property line. So if, 50 years from now, these huge trees are there, and one property owner says, I'm gonna cut a few of these down because I need charcoal, or I need, then some of them are on his lot, and that may happen, but that's kind of part of the risk that happens. So
these are the individual private property owners agree to have a tree on their property.
they do.
It's planted there, and now they own the tree essentially.
They do, and they also buy into the purpose of the project. And the thing about African culture that's different, not that the whole continent's this way, but specifically the spot in Uganda, is the community aspect of things, and it's not about as much individual rights as it is the community and the purpose. And so when the community understands the value of this project and how it's going to impact the community, you'd have a harder time cutting down that tree for individual gain and get away with it. So that it's self-policing from that standpoint.
This example, like you say this project was ongoing already, right? There was already an ongoing, is the tree thing new in the last couple of months? The tree thing is new in the last couple of months, I see.
Well, we did sell. Kibo's been around for a while. This idea's been kind of germinating for a while without a real presence online or the mechanics thought through of how to get people to sponsor trees and have the fulfillment a little more automated.
Were they planting trees beforehand, or no? They just had been talking about planting trees.
They did. They put up kind of a PDF-style website with a PayPal address, and you could sponsor a tree, and it was really, people's friends and family that were close to the project, and about 200 trees got sponsored, which gave them the ability to plant a couple hundred trees. And so now this last few months has been preparing for doing something on a larger scale. And
is this site launched?
It'll probably launch on Monday. So you're hearing it first. You can, yeah, absolutely, please.
Yeah, the address, yes.
Right now it's on a port number too, so it'll be Mavule, mavuleproject.org. And the other thing that's neat too is, so if you're buying Christmas gifts, and what do you give someone who has everything? It's kind of the American Christmas giving, debacle here. What do you do? So you sponsor a Mavule tree, and you gift it to them. They get to name it. It's kind of cool. They get to track it. Maybe there's a Facebook widget someone writes that, updates. The other thing that's neat is you actually get something in the mail that's a slick little, it's a DVD mailer. It's got a little bit on the DVD you can show someone. And it has a shrinky-dink ornament that you can put on your fridge or Christmas tree, and it ties into the number of acres that are lost per year, per month, per day, and how the forest is shrinking and what you're doing to make an impact to reverse that. So it's you actually get something. So if you want it as a gift, or you want it, you don't just get a Google coordinate on a map and get something physical. Oh, really? We'll do it again for you, so stick around.
Well, I'll
Okay.
have to video, and I'll have a couple questions for you guys afterwards.
Okay.
Ask questions for everybody.
Anyone else?
And I'll see if I can find out anything about whether those high resolution images came out. I would be
Great.
not surprised if just some
She raised her hand in the back and read. She knows something.
That you know and the people who provided the images.
My idea is we if and when we get the chance to travel out there, I'll take a camera, strap it to it like a helmet, hop on a moped, and we can get like a street view.
Yes, street view, perfect.
So that's kind of like, that's phase 4, as he was talking about.
On a motorcycle.
For me. So-
Street view, Africa. That's good. Do you have a question? No? Ah.
Yeah, actually,
okay.
I don't know why I never pulled up Google Earth to look at this stuff up either. I was just working with the map stuff, and that's kind of where I focused on. And there's a lot to be desired with a lot of the stuff, but it was kind of the first pass, and
it is.
You might think about doing a layer in Earth as well for your project.
Yeah.
If you
Tie all
make
this stuff.
if you make a KML file, it's really easy to load that into the API.
Okay.
API.
Cool.
Great. And personally, for me, and I think for the three of us, we love to be involved in something when it's early, when the need is the greatest, because it's not yet organized enough to even represent what its needs are. And it also has a lot of opportunity for creative people to be involved. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I got an idea, I mean, that's absolutely open game. Or if you know of anyone that you think we should be connected to, or an organization that you think should hear about this, feel free. There's lots of room.
I actually was just in Uganda a couple weeks ago. So, I have some contacts there that I can hear about.
Excellent.
They almost tried to keep you there. They did. That's
Is this organization beyond Uganda, or is it only in Uganda?
Right now, the local readiness is in southern Uganda, and that's what we're ready to deliver 5,000 trees through. And then there's other organizations that we're affiliated with that if we have the readiness on our end, we could extend this to them as a tool for them as well.
I think that's also the long-term goal, is that this does kind of expand into other areas of Uganda and other areas of Africa as well.
Well, should we wrap up the video segment, and then we can talk about things in detail? Great.